we want to help the animals around us. That's the small end of it. And I know it's not a big yard, but it does make a difference, and it does affect other people, and other people like it, and so they do it too. And if we all do that, we will make huge progress on our planet.
I'm at Spevak.
And I'm Mary Prong, and we're in our backyard in Lindenwood Park.
I'm the Curator of Invertebrates at the St. Louis Zoo and also Director for the Center for Native Pollinator Conservation.
I do both the exhibits at the St. Louis Zoo and the interpretation.
If you want to save elephants, gorillas, rhinos, tigers, what do? You go to the zoo, you support the zoo, you support other organizations who work on conservation, and then you're pretty much done. But for pollinators, you can do exactly those same things, but you can plant native plants. So you can be a conservationist right at home. All of us can support conservation, and this is just one step towards that.
The native caterpillars are dependent upon native plants. They can't eat anything else. So if you plant native plants, you get native caterpillars. Well, in the spring, most of our backyard birds feed their chicks those caterpillars. So without those caterpillars, you aren't going to have the native birds. So no native plants, no caterpillars, no native birds. We just have a zillion birds in our yard because of these native plants, and because the neighbor did native plants, and the lady across the street did native plants. The old build it and they will come is absolutely true. You put in native plants and you will get the insects, you will get the birds. It will completely change once you put in the native plants.
And even like the fireflies, this year was a great year for fireflies. Our neighbors' trees were lit up. Usually you tend to see the fireflies low, but to seeing trees lit up, it was actually kind of magical.
It was
when
beautiful.
we went into the backyard and saw all these fireflies going off.
It was just beautiful. When we moved in here 7 years ago, there wasn't much here. I mean, it was pretty much just grass. We love it. I mean, we sit out and look out our front window every morning while we eat our breakfast and look at the birds and look at the butterflies and look at the bees.
When something new comes through, it's just, it's most startling and exciting. It's having the bees, it's having, the butterflies and other insects, but it's also those predators, so nothing gets out of hand. We think of this as kind of like a mini Serengeti, where the caterpillars, the crickets and grasshoppers and katydids are like the wildebeest. So they're feeding on the grasses and plants to keep them in check. And then you have the spiders and wasps and short-tailed shrews and others keeping those animals in check. So every time we see something new, whether it's a new spider, whether it's a jumping spider or an orb weaver, or a spitting spider, or whatever it might be, it's like we just get excited and want those to be around.
We know it's healthy if there's predators.
Mm-hmm. Last year, we had a Mississippi kite chick sitting in our one tree for weeks. That chick would call for its parents to be fed constantly. And its call eventually became just what we started calling this chick. And so, baby, baby. So every morning you'd hear baby calling. We still hear baby because now baby's an adult and nesting in the area. So that was, every morning you get this joy of seeing baby calling for its parents. People go to the zoo to see new wildlife. Well, you can find it right here in your backyards. And that's the thing, we've lost our connection to nature. And with that loss of connection to nature, when we look at a monoculture of grass, we've also lost that diversity of wildlife around us. So there's a lot of talk about insect decline. And probably the best way to think about insect decline is it's death by 1,000 cuts. So loss of habitats, misuse of pesticides, invasive plants, invasive animals, pollution. All of these things are hampering our native species. We cannot survive without them. They are the little things that run the planet. They are the recyclers, they are the pollinators, they are the food for the birds that you hear flying over our heads. It's, we have this tendency to think of ourselves as separate from nature, but we are intimately connected. We just don't tend to think about it. From a very selfish point of view, we all have to eat. And when you look at, for the US economy, we're looking at a minimum of $29 billion of our economy is due to pollination of native bees and honeybees. If you want color, if you want nutrition, if you want flavor, if you want health, you need to think about the bees. And all of us planting for bees makes a more robust, resilient, you know, population. We all need nature. You know, this is, you know, it's not jobs versus nature. Nature creates jobs. We need the water, clean air. We need the services of pollinators. We cannot do anything outside that. The nice thing is it's so easy. Again, planting native plants. You know, so right here, there's a whole bunch of bees, and just, you know, as a kid, you tend to like and enjoy these things. It's strange that as we get older, we start thinking them as, I don't know, strange or dangerous or whatever it is.
The native bees are very gentle. They are just not aggressive. Here's a wasp. I mean, I'm what, 2 inches from that wasp right now? He doesn't care.
The beautiful thing about planting gardens like this and getting others in your neighborhood to plant them, creating that community, you start creating corridors. You start, you know, reducing that fragmentation. We need to connect, you know, those habitats. But in doing so, why don't we think about how we connect community? If we've got neighbors, so two of our neighbors right on each side of us, they've planted native plants. So it creates both a community for the wildlife, but it also creates a community of humans.
From my perspective, which is a design perspective, I want to have a balance between the architecture and the landscaping. Got bumblebees, all kinds of bees on either side of us. What I do is I usually keep things trimmed so that people who might not like bees feel like they can still go through. But most people like it. They actually go through, they're pointing them out to their kids. I want it to be a beautiful aesthetic. I want people to look at it and say, oh, native plants can be beautiful.
You know, when our plum is in bloom, the fragrance from that is just intoxicating. And so you have this aesthetic, both visually and sensually, with the scent that, you know, gets people excited about this plant. And then you start telling them, well, it's also supporting the bees, you know, and then for those which are producing fruits and nuts, like the service berry and aronia and stuff, then you're also supporting the birds with fruits, as well as you're also supporting the caterpillars. And you start doing that, and you start really seeing more joy and connection to both your community with that aesthetic, and then you start telling them stories, and then with your own environment here with the animals and plants. We also want to educate with our sign. So we've got, you know, a Grow Native sign. You know, talk about Grow Native, which is a great part of Missouri Prairie Foundation. We've got a new Wild One sign. We've got Xerxes Society. We've got Leave the Leaves, and we also have St. Katerra Conservation Center too, because, you know, we are Catholic, and also the idea of preserving God's creation too is very important.
For people who want to just start, I would recommend starting very, very small. Okay, a 3x3 area or a 10x10 area. Don't bite off more than you can chew.
Right, but don't also be afraid to start. Every little bit helps. You know, Wild Ones, Grow Native, Xerxes, Pollinator Partnerships, all of these organizations are there to assist in what you're trying to do. Whether from a conservation perspective or a faith-based perspective, we have a responsibility to take care of God's creation, to take care of the planet, to take care of the resources which support us, to take care of other animals. There's a quote by Luther Standing Bear, which I really love. And he said, "The old Lakota was wise. He knew that a man's heart away from nature becomes hard. He knew that lack of respect for growing living things soon led to lack of respect for humans too." If we lose that connection to nature and the others, we also lose our connection to other people too, and each other.